There are times when we assume love happens purely by chance, crediting powerful attraction to nothing more than chemistry, timing, or coincidence. Yet the more deeply we examine the human soul, the more evident it becomes that certain bonds carry a psychological weight that could not have been avoided. When a person chooses you in a way that defies reason, it's because something inside them recognized you well before their conscious mind could put it into words. On an unconscious level, we are always searching for wholeness, pulled toward those who hold the very psychological qualities our soul is desperately missing. This person didn't choose you simply because it was easy or convenient. They chose you because your presence confronted them directly and jolted them awake. If you believe some connections are truly written into the soul, hit like right now. You turned into a powerful psychological mirror for this person, reaching into buried wounds and exposing the emotional numbness they had carefully upheld for years. Through this mirroring, your compassion revealed their loneliness, your strength revealed their weakness, and your honesty stripped away the survival masks they had been hiding behind. People easily forget passing pleasures, but they can never forget an emotional awakening that permanently reshapes their inner world. Your connection didn't just flatter their ego, it challenged their soul to grow. The psyche naturally gravitates toward whatever has the power to transform it, refusing to release an experience that forces it to evolve. What's beautiful about this connection is that you probably remain unaware of your own influence, simply existing authentically while carrying your own pain without bitterness. In a world shaped by emotional manipulation and social performance, your capacity to survive disappointment without turning cruel became deeply magnetic. This person saw something rare in you, not a flawless illusion of perfection, but an unforgettable truth that sparked their higher awareness. Genuine attraction is never a random twist of fate. It's the soul recognizing its counterpart and refusing to overlook the one person holding the key to its destiny. These encounters mark moments when life pulls us toward emotional evolution, a calling people often resist for years because true intimacy is frightening. Being fully seen means the ego loses its grip, causing masks to crack and carefully built survival defenses to collapse over time. You disrupted the protective image this person had held for so long, shattering their belief that vulnerability equaled weakness and that emotional distance could shield them from pain. Your presence created an unavoidable internal conflict, leaving them caught between fleeing the intensity and wanting to surrender to it entirely. This psychological tug-of-war is why their behavior seemed so puzzling, since human beings frequently run from the very things they want most. No matter how hard they tried to bury these emotions, the unconscious mind kept pulling them back to you through recurring memories, dreams, and unexplainable feelings. Logic alone cannot dissolve a connection that reaches these deeper layers, proving that being chosen at the soul level has nothing to do with status or perfection. Some people encounter your body, but those who encounter your soul are forever changed because they can no longer deny what your presence stirred within them. This person is now nearing a profound moment of emotional truth and recognition, ready to finally admit that meeting you permanently shifted the entire course of their inner world. Comment soul if you've ever felt an unexplainable pull towards someone like this. The greatest tragedy in life is meeting someone who awakens your soul and being too afraid to speak the truth. A silence driven by the instinct to protect the ego. Most people assume love is welcomed openly, but psychologically, the deeper a feeling grows, the stronger the urge becomes to suppress it in order to hold on to control. The people who reshape your life are rarely the ones you anticipated, but they are always the ones who force you to encounter yourself in entirely new ways. This person is finally moving past that fear, recognizing that the ego's resistance cannot stop a destiny meant to transform you both. And this is exactly what happened to this person over time, as what they feel for you grew too significant to dismiss, yet too overwhelming to accept right away. So they did what many people do when confronted with something sacred and real. They tried to run from it for a while precisely because it was so powerful. As Carl Jung understood, when the psyche meets a connection capable of transforming it emotionally, the unconscious reacts defensively at first. This produces a deeply conflicted mind, where one part draws closer while another retreats in fear, craving intimacy yet dreading full exposure. If you felt confused by this person's behavior, it's because you were witnessing a fierce internal battle unfolding. Their silence wasn't emptiness, and their distance wasn't indifference, but rather an emotional overload caused by the sheer intensity of the connection. There are people skilled at flirting, performing attraction, and playing the game, but who have no idea how to handle genuine vulnerability. Your connection removed the daily mask they wear, exposing the deep loneliness beneath their confidence, the sadness behind their smile, and the exhaustion under their strength. This terrified them because people spend years building protective identities through emotional distance, forced independence, or constant distraction to avoid rejection. You became the profound disruption that caused those survival defenses to stop working properly, stirring emotions buried under years of self-protection. Memories surfaced powerfully, old wounds reopened quietly, and questions they had long avoided suddenly demanded answers whenever your energy was near. They could no longer comfortably stay asleep psychologically in the old way, so they resisted the connection for a while to protect themselves. They pulled back, not because they wanted to lose you forever, but because emotional and spiritual transformation always begins with deep discomfort and inner challenge. This person is finally realizing that the resistance was simply a symptom of a soul being forced to grow through your presence. The old identity is crumbling, clearing space for an authentic truth that fear can no longer silence. They may have imagined awakening would feel peaceful from the start. In reality, awakening often feels chaotic at first. It completely destabilizes the old self. It forces a confrontation with unresolved pain from the past. Confusion usually shows up before clarity arrives. That's why this person may have pulled away unexpectedly at times, why they acted distant right after moments of closeness, why they struggled to voice feelings that clearly existed beneath the surface. They were trying to hold on to control over emotions that refused to stay contained any longer. But the unconscious mind speaks its own language in its own way. And when emotions are consciously suppressed, they often resurface symbolically through other signs. This is why thoughts of you kept returning to them at night, why your memory surfaced in quiet moments during the day. Type yes if you want me to reveal more about the psychological signs they're about to confess. Why dreams became unusually vivid and meaningful. Why songs, places, and random experiences suddenly reminded them of you again and again. The psyche constantly tries to resolve unfinished emotional experiences. What gets denied consciously returns unconsciously in different forms. In symbolic terms, this is where the angels begin to appear, not necessarily as supernatural beings descending from above, but as moments of heightened awareness, breaking through denial and avoidance. Life itself begins steadily confronting the person with truth. Synchronicities show up in everyday life. Emotional signs repeat over time. The soul grows weary of pretending, and eventually the pressure becomes too much to bear. Because there comes a point when suppressing love becomes more painful than expressing it openly. That moment is now approaching for them. This person is beginning to understand that running from the connection hasn't freed them from it. Distance didn't erase the emotions they felt. Silence didn't dissolve the attachment inside. In fact, avoidance only deepened their awareness of what you truly mean to them. Why is that? Because authentic emotional bonds don't vanish through suppression. They grow deeper in the shadows, quietly. The human soul doesn't measure importance the way the ego does. The ego values pride, certainty, and control above everything. The soul values meaning and depth instead. And once someone experiences a connection carrying real emotional meaning, ordinary distractions lose their grip. That's why they are nearing an internal breaking point. Now the exhaustion of hiding their feelings is becoming heavier than the fear of revealing them. For a long time, they hoped the emotions would fade on their own. But instead, the connection kept evolving inside them quietly, relentlessly, almost spiritually. Perhaps this is what we must understand about love. The feelings we resist most fiercely often hold the deepest truths about who we are. The soul always demands honesty from the life the ego tries to manage. And the longer a person hides, the louder the heart grows. This person didn't choose you based on surface-level attraction, convenience, or fleeting fascination, but because they encountered your soul at a moment when their own spirit was worn out. Whether you're aware of it or not, your presence became a profound emotional refuge, restoring psychic balance and reconnecting them to forgotten parts of themselves. Before meeting you, they only knew how to survive through a mastered independence. But your authenticity made their emotional numbness impossible to sustain. Drop awaken if this person's energy ever disturbed your peace in a powerful way. Most people constantly adjust and perform versions of themselves to earn approval, avoid rejection, or maintain control. Occasionally, though, someone carries a rare honesty that can't be faked, a depth born from pain that softens the spirit rather than hardening it. This is exactly the quality they recognized in you, watching how you kept giving despite disappointment and stayed kind after betrayal. They saw how you carried invisible wounds without demanding sympathy from the world. And this quiet resilience moved them more than any dramatic words ever could. Unconsciously, people trust genuine emotional truth far more than an illusion of perfection, which often feels distant and unreal. Wounded people who choose to remain compassionate carry a rare emotional credibility that touches the heart, letting their scars speak psychologically to another's hidden pain. Your presence disrupted their carefully built isolation, proving that survival and true psychological wholeness are not the same thing at all. This deep recognition is what makes your connection unforgettable, forcing their ego to surrender to a truth that will crack something open inside both of you. Your resilience communicated something their soul desperately needed to see, that suffering doesn't have to destroy tenderness, that pain doesn't have to erase love entirely, that it's possible to endure hardship without becoming emotionally cold. This realization changed them from within over time. Perhaps for the first time in years, they felt emotionally safe in someone's presence. And emotional safety is one of the rarest experiences in today's world. People talk constantly about attraction, chemistry, and desire, but far fewer talk about the relief of feeling understood without having to perform around you. They didn't feel pressured to become someone else. They felt accepted in their imperfection, naturally. Now, psychologically, this creates an incredibly powerful attachment because the human soul longs to be witnessed honestly and fully. Every person carries hidden shame, secret fears, and insecurities they rarely show. Most relationships stay stuck on the surface because both people protect themselves behind masks. But with you, the mask began to slip away gradually. And although this frightened them at first, it also healed them in the process. This is why the confession they're preparing carries so much emotional weight. They aren't simply going to admit affection alone. They're going to reveal dependence. Not unhealthy dependence, but emotional significance. They're going to confess that your existence became meaningful to their inner world. That's a difficult truth for many people to admit, especially those who spent years convincing themselves they needed no one. But your presence completely shattered that illusion. Without even trying, you became tied to their emotional recovery. Your words comforted them during silent battles you may never fully know about. Your energy gave them peace during periods of inner chaos. Even your absence taught them something painful but necessary, how deeply they valued you, in truth. And strangely enough, this realization often comes into focus most clearly during separation. When people lose contact with someone emotionally significant, the unconscious mind begins surfacing truths the ego once buried. Suddenly, the person notices how empty certain experiences feel without them. Conversations feel less meaningful. Achievements feel oddly hollow. Distractions stop working effectively because once the soul recognizes genuine emotional resonance, artificial substitutes lose their appeal. And this is why they can no longer ignore what they feel for you. Not because they are weak, not because they are emotionally dependent, but because the connection touched a depth inside them they never expected to encounter in this lifetime. You reminded them of who they were before pain taught them to hide. And perhaps this is the secret many people never fully grasp about love. We don't fall deeply for people because they complete us perfectly. We fall deeply because they awaken the forgotten parts of ourselves we thought had vanished forever. That's why this confession carries tears behind it. Because when someone finally says, "I chose you," what they often truly mean is, "Your presence helped me find myself again." There is nothing more powerful than being loved, not for the mask you wear, but for the soul you were brave enough to remain. The illusion of emotional control always collapses when a person can no longer explain away what they feel through logic, distraction, or denial. Remarkably, this turning point rarely arrives during comfort. It shows up during separation, uncertainty, or the terrifying possibility of permanent loss. This person went through that exact crisis after trying to manage the connection intellectually, rationalizing and downplaying their feelings to protect the ego's authority. Type manifest if you can feel their ego completely surrendering to this connection. When unexpected distance grew or they sensed you pulling away, the fear of your permanent absence disrupted their inner balance and revealed the truth with painful clarity. As Carl Jung noted, the unconscious mind reveals itself most powerfully through emotional crisis, cutting through illusion the moment ordinary distractions disappear. Suddenly, they could no longer hide behind their defenses, and what they once suppressed demanded immediate recognition as memories returned with unusual intensity. Conversations replayed endlessly in their mind, and small details of your voice, energy, and presence carried an emotional weight that proved your absence was changing them psychologically. Ordinary emotions fade with distance, but soul-level connections grow clearer in separation, allowing the unconscious mind to steadily overpower the ego. From the outside, this transformation looks quiet and invisible, while privately they undergo a massive psychological collapse of their old comforting beliefs. The fierce independence they once worshipped now feels empty, and the rigid control they fought to maintain has become utterly exhausting. For the first time, they are asking themselves whether the person they fled is the one their soul had been desperately searching for, forcing pride to weaken and their heart to demand absolute honesty. This internal shift mirrors moments of awakening that redirect human consciousness toward truth, arranging emotional confrontations they can no longer avoid. Synchronicities increase around them, dreams grow more intense with meaning, and the psychological weight of the connection follows them everywhere. It feels as though existence itself refuses to let them forget you, because certain connections arrive to transform us rather than merely comfort us. You became an undeniable catalyst for this person's deep transformation, disrupting their old life to clear a path for authentic love. The journey was never meant to be gentle, but it has brought them to the absolute end of their resistance. Comment mirror if you've ever been someone's emotional mirror like this. The old self must weaken before the authentic self can emerge, which explains why they stayed emotionally conflicted for so long. One version of them desperately chased safety, control, and distance, while another version longed to fully surrender to the truth of what they felt. Eventually, this internal tension became completely unbearable until a sudden defining moment forced their repressed emotions to rise into consciousness all at once. Whether triggered by unexpected jealousy, hearing your voice after silence, or imagining a future where you truly disappeared, the impact hit with unusual force. They have now confronted their hidden shadow reality and can never comfortably return to denial, because they know deep down you permanently altered their inner world. What makes this realization so intensely emotional is the terrifying awareness of how close they came to losing this connection entirely because of fear. They nearly sacrificed a sacred bond to protect their ego from vulnerability, but life taught them wisdom through the agonizing threat of permanent regret. We rarely awaken when life feels safe and certain. Instead, the heart finally becomes honest at the exact moment absence feels more frightening than vulnerability. This psychological turning point brings them directly to the final stage of this long journey, the impending confession itself. A confession is never just about speaking hidden feelings aloud. It represents the complete collapse of separation between their inner world and external reality. This approaching threshold is the exact moment a person stops hiding from themselves, a psychological shift that fundamentally changes a person forever. For a long time, they survived by analyzing and controlling their emotions rather than surrendering, foolishly convincing themselves that silence was safer than exposure. However, unspoken truths never disappear. They build up an immense weight within the psyche until the soul grows completely exhausted, carrying what the mouth refuses to say. You may already sense this shift intuitively, as they are finally ready to step beyond the prison of their own defense mechanisms. Their resistance has broken, clearing the path for an unfiltered, vulnerable truth that will redefine your destiny together. People communicate psychologically long before words arrive. Energy shifts. Attention changes. Emotional tension becomes visible in subtle ways. Sometimes the soul announces what the lips have not yet admitted, because deep inside, they know the time for avoidance is ending. Now, what makes this moment particularly significant is that the confession will not simply be about romantic desire. It will carry layers of emotional truth far deeper than ordinary attraction, revealing how profoundly you affected their inner life. This level of honesty terrifies most people, because admitting emotional significance means surrendering control and embracing vulnerability. They spent a long time resisting this realization, fiercely guarding their inner world from intrusion. However, resistance can only continue until the pain of suppression finally outweighs the fear of exposure. That psychological turning point has arrived, and the internal emotional pressure has reached a level where honesty feels less frightening than continued silence. As Carl Jung believed, human growth demands confronting truth, which forces pride to weaken and emotional masks to fall away. The version of them that feared vulnerability is collapsing, and an authentic self is emerging that leads directly toward you. Despite their attempts to distance themselves, thoughts of you persisted, and memories deepened in the quiet space of their unconscious mind. They now recognize that you loved them through rare emotional consistency, patience, and safety, rather than dramatic declarations. This person finally sees clearly what they once overlooked, realizing your presence was never about manipulation, but a rare offering of pure emotional truth. Type cry if you feel this confession is coming soon. Whether this confession arrives through hesitant words, tears, or a vulnerable conversation, it represents a profound psychological awakening rather than a simple romantic moment. While you might underestimate your impact because of your own flaws, your authenticity carried a transformative energy that quietly healed their forgotten hope. You became a force of integration in their life, proving that the soul can only remain divided for so long before truth demands a voice. Ultimately, this connection transcends mere desire. It is about being truly recognized beyond survival masks, opening the door to an extraordinary reality of intimacy without fear. Like, comment which part touched your soul the most, and subscribe for more messages about soul connections and emotional awakenings.